Welcome gamers to another video. Today we're talking about Mewgenics. It took me about 200 hours to beat this game, but I finally have, and now I'm going to talk about it. So, what is Mewgenics? Well, Mewgenics is a turn-based strategy game roguelike where you breed cats to make better cats where you can take them out in runs and try to beat up the enemies. The game starts with Dr. Beanie's waking you up, giving you some cats, and sending you on your way. Now, before we get into the locations and story that this game has, I'm going to give a brief overview of the basic gameplay of Mewgenics. You send up to 4 cats out on a run, you give them some items, and they're going to have spells and passive abilities that do different things depending on the class that you select. And they'll just give you some random ones that you would start with, and you'll find more as they level up by defeating enemies. Then once you've completed the run of the cats, they go back home and they become retired, so you can't do any more runs with them. But they can be used for breeding to get some new cats to take on runs that will inherit the traits of the previous cats that you had, ensuring that you get some usually better cats for your next run, unless they're inbred, in which case they're usually worse. Now, with that out of the way, let's get started with Act 1. First thing you're going to get is the first 4 classes of the game, which is Fighter, Hunter, Tank, and Mage. They each hold different roles. The Fighter does pretty big melee damage and is fast, but he's kind of frail. The Hunter, obviously, he does range attacks, but he also has little summons and can make traps. Tanks hits. He, makes sure that none of the other guys take damage, and he just eats all the damage himself. And then the Mage, although kind of frail, has some of the better spells, especially damage-wise in the game. Now that you've got your 4 cats and you've got their classes down, you will send them out first to the alley, which is the beginning of Act 1. Getting through the alley, you can make either 2 different directions. Each act has a split after being the first section, where there's 2 different paths you can go down. And from what I've seen, usually one path is like the DPS path. You've got a good damage output, that one's the easier pick. Whereas the other one is, you don't need as good of a DPS, but it's really gimmicky, so you kind of have to get around some weird mechanics and stuff. In this case, the DPS path is taking the sewers and then to the caves. Whereas the gimmick path is down the junkyard and then the boneyard. Then they converge back into the final zone, which is the throbbing domain. Not a lot story-wise or anything happens other than you getting to meet some of the main NPCs, and Act 1 is mainly there to let you figure out the main mechanics of the game. Now, before we get into Act 2, I want to talk about one of the coolest features about Mewgenics, that being its soundtrack. This soundtrack is absolute fire. It's been playing in the background this whole time and for the rest of this video, but when you encounter a boss, they add lyrics to the already pretty peak background music. Here, I'll show you guys an example.
Felt like a fine start, but now it's all falling apart. So many mistakes, just like Napoleon Bonaparte. Search through the debris, finding pieces of you and me. Wish that I could see how we ended here.
I mean, talk about absolute cinema. This soundtrack is just amazing all the way through. Now that we're done with that brief intermission, let's get back into Act 2 of Mewgenics. First things first, we've got 4 more classes to talk about. Those being the Necromancer, Cleric, Butcher, and Thief. Necromancer is all about draining the health from enemies, and they also often get a lot of bonuses from being dead. The Thief moves pretty fast and can get some pretty good benefits from getting backstabs, but they're pretty frail, so make sure to keep them out of the front line. The Cleric is the first healing class that we're going to get in the game, and it's all about support and heals. And last, but most certainly not least for these 4, is the Butcher. The Butcher's got to be my favorite class. They're really tanky and can do quite a lot of melee damage, with the main caveat being that they're pretty slow. However, they got a chain so they can pull off a Mortal Kombat move and just pull enemies right towards them. The difficulty spike of Act 2 is not to be reckoned with. This game stops holding your hand and can get crazy difficult at times. You start in the desert, and the two branching paths being the DPS check path, which is the bunker, and then the core, which is just straight up hell. So a little more intense than just some cave somewhere. And then on the gimmick check, we have the crater and the moon. Yet we go to the moon. The paths converge into the rift, which seems to just be like a dimension of chaos. It's insane. Now, considering the difficulty spike that this act has to do, this is going to lead right into our next subject for this game, which is synergies. You are not going to be able to get to this game without a good understanding of how your abilities and spells and passives and all that synergize together to create some broken builds. Synergies are fairly self-explanatory. You got multiple, say, passives or spells or something that have abilities that directly work together in order to create something more powerful than the sum of their parts. A favorite synergy of mine stems from a class we haven't talked about yet, the Psychic, where you get a passive that says all gravity-related spells you have spawn glass. And then a specific spell that has a huge area of effect that it doesn't do any damage or anything. All it does is just kind of pile enemies into the middle of that huge area of effect. However, that spell's gravity element. So that huge area of effect is all affected the gravity element, therefore causing like half the map to be covered in glass and plopping the enemies right in the middle. You're going to have to get pretty familiar with all your abilities and how they work together in order to create something more powerful. It might not even be spells and abilities from the same classes, but you're going to have to figure out how to use them in unique ways to get insane builds that can do crazy amounts of damage. And I feel like that level of strategy is another extremely good reason on why I think this game is just so good. It's amazing. Things like this, just that every ability and spell, even by themselves, they may look like they suck, they can actually be really broken with the right tools. Now, to start off with Act 3, we've got 5 classes actually, which are Druid, Psychic, Monk, Jester, and Tinkerer. The Druid is the other healing class in the game, and while its healing may not be as strong as the Clerics, it can heal more people at the same time, and is much more focused on buffing and also spawning animal companions to help you out during the fight. The Tinkerer is all about making weapons and armor pieces and stuff, and using those to do damage instead of your basic attacks. The Psychic is more about manipulation of the field rather than actually doing damage, so moving around enemies and getting them to the right places for everyone else to deal with them. The Monk can hit something so many times, but each hit doesn't do very much damage. So it's actually one of the best for getting their abilities onto other cats where their attacks actually do a significant amount of damage, because it's all about doing bonus attacks. And last but not least, the Jester, which is essentially just kind of like a random chaos button. It can get abilities and attacks from any of the other 12 classes in the game completely at random. There's a couple Jester exclusive abilities like Super Luck, but they're really rare, so it's not likely you're getting something like that throughout most of the game. Act 3 is where they throw every silly mechanic and functionality that they can at you in order to ensure that you have as hard of a time as possible getting through it. And man, oh man, is it just amazing. You have to strategize so well in order to get through. The starting location is the lab, which was the lab of Dr. Beanie's, the guy that resurrected you. But his cats and stuff that he was experimenting on revolted, causing him to get kicked out. And you're going through, and you build yourself a time machine, which lets you take the 2 split paths. The first one, the DPS check, meaning the past. You do the Ice Age, and then you go down to the Jurassic. But the way more interesting one is when you go to the future. When you take the future path, you go to first something that's called Das Future, which the best way to describe it is what if WALL-E, but Nazis. Oh my gosh, YouTube's gonna kill me for this one, aren't they? But once you get through there and fight, I kid you not, Hitler 2, you go to the end, which is basically a huge reference to a different one of Edmund McMillen's games, The End Is Nigh. These two paths converge into the infinite, which is essentially heaven, and they make you fight God. And even if you manage to pull it off, which, mind you, this fight is incredibly difficult, you'll realize game's not over yet, because Dr. Beanies has one more task for you. You gotta build a nuke to kill God. Now, I hear you asking yourself, why on earth does Dr. Beanies want to kill God? He's mad at God for letting his cat Stacy die, and this is his form of revenge. As you guys are escaping heaven because, you just nuked it, you run into Steven. He's from a different one of Edmund McMillen's games, and he seems to have become some sort of time deity who's managing time. He's the guy that yells at you every single time you try to save scum in this game. He seems to be pretty annoyed with all our time travel shenanigans and begins to murder Dr. Beanies. After that happens, the game kind of just ends, and we get the revelation that our main character is Magdalene, aka Isaac's mother, from another one of Edmund McMillen's games. I'm sure you could have guessed. This guy loves referencing his other games, and which is a crazy lore dump to kind of just plop into the credits for people who have finished the game. Which, mind you, currently only about 3% of people who have played this game have actually completed it. And that's about all we've got for it so far. There is a planned DLC for an Act 4 coming on later, which I'm sure will clear up all the lore that we've got for this game. But what are some things about the lore that we already know right now, I hear you ask? Well, that is an excellent question. If it wasn't obvious, this game seems to take place in the same universe as Isaac. I mean, you play as Isaac's mother. And it seems that you have died and Dr. Beanies revived you in order to, go on this mad quest to kill God. But other than that, only kind of bits and pieces that we're trying to put together. Hopefully, again, the Act 4 clarifies it. But as of right now, it's a little confusing. And that's about all I've got from Mewgenics. Overall, this is one of my favorite games, and I think it's Edmund McMillen's best game so far. And I hope that if you guys haven't played it yet, you guys give it a shot. It's really fun, especially if you like strategy games. If you like this video and would like to see more like it, please subscribe, as it encourages me to keep making more videos just like this one. I'll see you guys later, and GG's.